I think I had made Kayla host, and when she logged off, everybody got cut off. Anyway, I'm just going to finish this thought for you. Okay, we'll see if other people come on. And that is, I don't see a need for this semi superhuman being because that's clearly a crutch. To me, that's a cultural crutch. And I know, we can argue about this, whatever. The larger point is if we take the notion of God the way you and I believe we can take it, which is God is the universe, God is the way that things work, God is pretty much everything we can see, observe, etc., etc. Then to me, it's gone beyond anthropomorphic. And then we can just agree on any term we want: nature, universe, supernatural, God, creation, big turtles, whatever. Okay, we can just agree on any term. But at that point, we're now talking about the entirety of the universe. And if we are, then to me, it's a little bit misleading then to use a term like God, which others have associated so many anthropomorphic attributes to, like meanness. Is there any usefulness or utility to attaching meanness to the universe or any other human attribute? You know, so to me, it's
I've got a
useless
problem
to
with
use
calling
a
them
term
human
like that
attributes.
for all of creation. And that's the two ways I would answer your question. Okay, if that makes
I've
sense.
got a problem with them being called human attributes. The attributes exist within existence.
Okay, so that's
Humans
another conversation.
only sort of feel those attributes part of the time. Can other species fulfill those attributes? And if they can, are they really human? Or are the attributes separate from us? And can we become that attribute? Because if we look at every point in our spectrum of humanity, each person's a different attribute of existence.
Different instance.
So how do you call them human attributes? Or another one I keep hearing is inhumane. What does that mean? If we look at what our species has done to each other, what's humane? We do human things, and those human things can be god awful. So what terminology does that word
Not awful,
have?
literally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what goes back to what Colin was saying, that God being mean. What I'm saying about existence is the functionality is what it is. So even those mean things have made you grow and change.
Yeah. So that is a bigger discussion. I didn't mean to imply by saying they're human attributes as they were only human attributes and not attributable to other species. That was not my intent.
It's
We
just
are
one I pick
so
up in humanity.
minuscule. We are so minute that anything we understand is a very rough and very coarse approximation to what the actual universe probably is. And the constant inquiry and curiosity to lean into that and to observe, to me, is the more interesting aspect. Not to settle or to compile and to concretize a particular notion of a God with its attendant morality and then say, okay, this is it. Let's put it in a book. It'll never change. I'm going to teach this forever from now on. That to me is not a useful construct. Over.
No, because everything evolves and then the perceptions of that thing evolves. This is why I think it's the corruptions, because the future generations didn't understand the original abstractions and then kept changing them through Chinese whisper.
Well, there's
Mm,
multiple reasons why it changes, but that's one of them. Yeah.
yeah, look at language. How many people truly know the words? How many people use them correctly for their intended meaning and definition? No, not that many. When you get right down to it, you find quite a lot of people have never, ever looked up the
That's
dictionary
right. All
definition of the
Americans are
word.
wrong according to the British, right?
Oh, definitely, always. It's not got a U, colour's got a U in it.
And analyze has a Z in it.
No, it's got an S. It's an S.
Anyway, I just wanted to give you that response before I signed off. I have to go get my daughter ready, and my dogs especially ready for going to this class. Boy, the air quality is getting worse, actually. Anyway, good conversation. Glad you still are interested enough to keep joining us, Josh. I'm sorry, Joel. And Jaswinder, you've been remarkably quiet today, but curious to see how you might want to check out. I'm checking out. So
He's observing
okay.
and watching me, I think.
Cute. There is such a thing as too much astuteness, and it's not cute. It's good to see you, fellow being.
Just to let you know, since the other session was cut off, I had made Kayla host. And when she signed off, everybody was cut off. But since the new session has restarted, you are now able to go for another 4 hours if you
Who's
like. Okay?
host?
So I'm not going to cut that off.
Who's your host, Sam? Thank you. Most kind. I can't, you're mute, Sam. Sam, you're mute. And frozen.
Okay,
No.
so Joel is
Right.
now co-host and Jaswinder is now host. And I can now
Run away.
depart, but I'm going to be quiet and you guys can end the session whenever you like. Okay?
Thank you. I was just about to say, before we were so rudely interrupted by the host, it's been very good to see you.
Yes, it's good to see you too.
And I would
I'm
like
enjoying
to.
watching your interaction with your family. It's beautiful.
Oh, it's kind of difficult to describe to the unbelievers the electromagnetic interaction that I get from just not just the group dynamics, but from children themselves. It's tremendous.
They haven't had their perceptions corrupted by adults. They're
Absolutely.
still fluid and beautiful.
Yeah. And how to convince, well, Sam might not be that much of a problem, but Colin certainly, that he has senses on board that he's not aware of and he's not using. And those senses are directly linked to what we call spirituality. And there's so many of them. And you're absolutely right when you say that other beings exhibit these attributes. And who are we to challenge any of them?
Functionality of existence is what it is, and our abilities and concepts fall in that. And it's also beautiful.
But we have those attributes built into us as well, because we evolved along that line.
Mm-hmm. My only problem is in the terminology of calling it human.
It's not human. Human was a word coined less than 500 years ago. It's in direct kind of try and separate spirituality or religion from politics. It's just sheer lunacy. It can't be done. It really can't be done. But that's something we will have to go through again, no doubt.
Humans never learn. Round in circles. One generation learns the lessons, the next generation forgets them.
Along the way, somebody like you comes along, and quite possibly you will, no doubt, in my mind, no doubt you will be able to actually bathe in and show the light at some time. But having said that, there have been many who have done that, and many who have taught others how to do that and to use their God-given attributes sparingly, only where it would be of the utmost good. It doesn't seem to get written in. The question that I have been asking myself for a couple of 3 decades is that, is morality that is currently being taught in society by the things that we call schooling sufficient Or is extra morality required before the practice of becoming spiritually aware should be imparted to the gathered? And I haven't been able to answer that in a positive way so far. I
Me
find the
neither.
morality. Say again?
Me neither. The only conclusion I've ever managed to reach on trying to teach everyone perception is that you can't. The only thing you can do is do what the Buddha did. Create a place for people to develop and hope they come to you when they're ready. There will always need to be some outreach.
That was one of the first things on my mind nearly 3 decades ago, was that there should be more places where people can actually partake of, even if it's only a room on its own in a building where they work, where they can sit and just be quiet. And that, as far as I can see, from this city at least, has occurred because some of us made the effort to make it happen. And moreover, I think it's spreading in that most universities now have chaplaincies for the big 6 at any rate. And most universities have prayer rooms, if not actually a prayer hall or even a separate building dedicated to religiosity. That again is excellent. The local hospital here has a chaplaincy, a prayer room, ablutions room, and a resident chaplain and visiting chaplains of various denominations. So over the last 3 decades, I'm not taking credit for any of that. I was merely a very small instrument in that I made it my business to put ideas about. And sometimes, and I have to thank something somewhere, just by being somewhere, that the idea was conveyed by just me being there, and that something should happen to convey more people like me to be about, which is excellent. But that has not, say again?
I saw a documentary with a Buddhist hermit monk, and I could see the function of what he was to the people, being that sort of prayer, but he didn't understand it. So his purpose was being fulfilled even though he didn't need to understand. No. I saw that as beautiful as well.
But that has not led to directly an increase in becoming enlightened. And I don't mean enlightened by just gaining the knowledge. I mean reaching a point where a person stops dead and says, and asks a pertinent question like, what the fuck am I? I really don't understand anything. I need to research this really deeply now. And I can honestly say that effect I have imparted to no more than a handful. And to actually get them to see the light inside themselves and try and join with the light outside, that's only about 2 or 3. And I'm talking about serious efforts of talking with people, sitting with them, going through the various, there are only 6 or 7 techniques, 9 at the most, of doing the practices to get that. And only about 3 have achieved that. One
I don't know where I am.
Sorry?
I don't know where I am. I know I perceive a lot, but I don't exactly know that.
We will take you further. There's no qualms about that. Just a matter of learning the techniques. And the mantra out loud. Any mantra. You can use the vowels,
Serenity.
you can use anything you like, and you can create that space inside. Physical fitness. The looking in the mirror with the eyes wide open and letting the eyes totally relaxing, dissociate from your body and let the eyes go out of focus. See what you see. The communal prayer, the singing, anything you like, but especially in ragas, in the steps that are very gentle, very loving and caring, to induce your body and to actually vary the pitch of your voice, to get various parts of your body to vibrate. Your voice is one of your best instruments. Associating with people like me and others, doesn't really matter whether you agree with their particular bent or not. If you can see they're spiritual, saintly people, associate with them and learn the techniques. Silent meditation. And the best of all, you are aware of this, so I will take the courtesy of reminding you that somewhere in there is a place where the spirit resides. It's between, its exact spot is where the ears and the eyes meet deep inside the structure. The cerebrospinal fluid space. It's a beautiful structure. If you ever get a chance to have a look at it on Google, it's a little corrupted nowadays. There's so much junk in there. But if you've seen the statue on the old spirit on the Rolls Royce bonnet, the old silver shadow Rolls Royce, you've got this the spirited angels with her wings spread out, and the plinth. It's more or less that shape, and it's superb. And all the fluid that originates from the spongy structure goes from there all the way up and around the brain and down the spine and down each and every nerve fiber. It's everywhere in the body, the spirit. It's so blatantly obvious and under our nose and eyes. We just totally ignore it.
See what can't be seen by that which is seen. That's how I've worked since I was very young. I started driving and I'd see car lights and everybody would wonder how I knew a car was coming in. It's that because I'd seen that instant of the car light coming around the corner. That's how I got to everything I understand about existence, is by seeing what is seen and then seeing what isn't seen by what is, knowing that it's almost a mirror image of negative functionality rather than positive functionality.
Right, and now I'm just going to do what I did when we were sitting in Mr. Sharma's cafe. Did you get the name of that cafe, by the way?
I didn't know.
Well, it wasn't called the dosa joint or anything like that, was it? It was something cafe. I'll have to look it up again. Anyway, now, before false dawn, every day, depending on where you are in the hemisphere, because it varies in the northern hemisphere, is the radioactive silence. You're aware of that, no doubt. Because I think I do remember telling you about that.
Yeah.
In days of old, I remember getting this out of the scriptures, the Jewish scriptures, from the university, and it was quite an enlightening moment for me when it was read out by the lecturer, Professor Burke. I don't know if you've ever heard of Professor Deirdre Burke, who's in Newquay now, retired. Anyway, she was going through she was converting to Judaism, and she was going through the Judeo practices of praying. And she described the morning prayer of you get up in the morning, have your morning ablutions, do your prayers, and well before dawn, be seated and to feel whatever there is to feel. And then she shrugged her shoulders and said, "What's that all about?" So she didn't know what she was describing is that at that time, there is a feeling that there is nothingness. The nothingness can be felt because there's radioactive silence, there's sound silence, if you're lucky enough and you're not in the city, or sometimes even in the city. And it's a magical moment. And I've felt that many, many times. And it's the best time to try and connect with the electromagnetic that's outside. Because there's no resistance, you can go further out. Your whole electromagnetic sphere can go further out, especially this one, because it's very strong. And I do remember saying to you that if you have a Brahma Kumaris in Bristol, which you will do, find out when they have their meditation sessions. It's one of the best ones for doing just that. And I think it's mainly Thursdays, Thursday morning and Thursday evening. And the morning ones are the best. If you can get there before they start the session at 5, 6 a.m., it's an excellent idea to get that.
What was the place it cut out?
Brahma Kumaris.
Brahma Kumaris.
Brahma as in the creator Brahma. Kumaris, Kumaris. And they call themselves the Brahma Kumaris University of something or other. And they're all over the place.
There's one in Worthing.
Say again?
There's one in Worthing. It's a little, about 20 minutes away from me.
That's good. Excellent. Acquaint yourselves with themselves, and they have a retreat not far from you, by the way.
It's that centre. The retreat centre is the closest one.
There you go. And I've been there. It's an excellent mansion there with wonderful gardens and follies and things. Great for a walk and great for a seminar, conference, whatever. So I would strongly suggest you avail yourself of their amenities, and obviously make a donation for whatever you think it's worth. I also went to the Buddhist center not far from Bristol in South Wales somewhere. And in those days, the cost was about £11 a day for the retreat. But they don't ask you to actually pay anything. They ask you to pay what you feel you are able to afford. So some don't pay, some pay a small amount, and some pay the right amount, and some pay more, which is good. So it keeps the system going. And there are other religions who are also now doing camps for the spiritual awakening. So in the last 30 years in the UK, I'm very glad to say we've come a long way. Now, the next thing on my agenda, which has always been on my agenda, is that it should be part of the curriculum of humanities that certainly the best practices of awakening the light inside should be taught how to practice, so that the individual student can continue post-uni graduation and achieve that moment of enlightenment where everything becomes a question mark. I have held back from approaching the local professor of humanities because I'm not certain that the morality that is currently in the schools, secondary schools and university students of the required caliber.
I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah. And if necessary, I'll take the knowledge with me. But certainly for those like yourself seeking, I will impart that knowledge. And even those not seeking but are worthy, I will impart the knowledge. But I'm no longer trying to force anybody anymore, because it's just not worth the effort anymore. That's all I have to say. I've enjoyed the session immensely. Your articulation is superb.
I've always worried about my articulation. In my younger years,
You
I had a habit of putting my
will
foot
do
in it.
what I did, which was initially I was coming on quite fluid and quite fast, and then had to tone it down so that people understood it more. But in doing that, they understand even less because they do not want to do any of the practices.
No.
You know, it's Colin's idea of something that's proof is kind of like, for Darwin to prove the theory of evolution, he spent, I don't know how many years he spent aboard Beagle, and but I'm aware that it took him about 3 years to write the book, out of which he spent nearly 6 months, maybe a year, cogitating whether he should publish or not. So it was an extremely hard work to publish for him.
And he made one
about,
mistake.
Say again?
And he made one mistake.
It doesn't matter. What I'm getting at is that it's not easy providing the proof of something. You can't just say to somebody, well, you are conjecturing that there is a God. So if there is a God, there must be a proof for God. Please furnish the proof to us forthwith. Put it on the platter, put it on there so I can see. I want to see God.
And they won't do the work without that proof. And so they stuck in samsara.
How do you teach somebody or tell somebody or show somebody how to look inside? I've only ever been able to get Colin to sit down for 10 minutes to do a silent session. And he continued that for 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, but I don't think he does it anymore. And he tells lies that, yes, I do that. Of course he does.
People don't understand how their lies are obvious from how they express their words.
Well, you know, I think he's about 55-ish now. So for a good 40 years, he's been hiding, and it's worked.
Mm.
And he may not even be aware of that he's playing hide and seek. And I've broken through his armor forcefully and shown him where he's hiding. And he believes me. A week later, it's wiped clean. His memory is very bad.
My memory is only as good as what I can dimensionalize. My abstract memory is terrible. Because what I can see in my head all the time is that.
Do not consolidate that which you find a little under par. Work on it and improve it. You're only How shall I put
33.
this? Don't do that. Bad habit. Get out of it before it becomes solid cement. Improve it. Work on it, young man. Anyway, it's 2000 hours. And I think supper's ready and I ought to do something about that. How are things for you? Are you at home?
Yeah, I've been working the last few days. A friend had some wood rot in his floor, so I've been replacing the joists and the floorboards. And it took a few more days because we didn't realise that the little woodworm fellows had chewed their way through a great number of joists.
Yeah, we had that problem a couple of 3 years ago. This floor, that floor, the other floor, they've all been replaced. Fortunately, the kitchen is from the old days when it was and still is concrete. Are you with your family, mother, father?
I live with
Sibling?
my mother and
Just
one
your
other
mother.
brother, and we've got a lodger.
So your brother and your lodger and your mother in the same house.
But we all live relatively separate.
Like,
Four-story house.
what was I going to, no, why no sisters?
Only sister-in-laws. I think I've got one sister, but she's not my mother's child. My parents and family's rather complicated. I've got like 8 siblings.
That's fine. There's no complication there. As long as you have accepted them, that's fine. You don't have to be genetically related.
When I see them, we've got the same father. I mean, I've got 2 older, that is my mother and another guy. Then me and my brother by my mum and my father. And then my father has had kids after.
I won't remember any of that. I'm not even trying
No, it's complicated and not worth the memory.
They're just there and that's fine. They're good human beings. Are any of them in line with you?
No.
Oh, shame.
They all do different things, and most of them have thought I was crazy most of my life.
Which we know they're not.
I'm
Them
the black sheep of the family.
Yeah.
The outspoken one that just goes, nope, that's rubbish. No.
Understood. Understood.
Thank you
Well,
for
shall we have-
guiding me. You know, I tried for years to find people who could see something in me, and I always got knocked back. So I really appreciate that you've seen something in me and feel it's worth building and growing.
Absolutely. I cannot stress strongly enough how I felt, and it was a genuine kind of rage that grew inside me as I went about this city and asking people who professed by their posting as the bishop or the bishop of the diocese or the vicar of the Holy Trinity Church here, that or the preacher at the Gurdwara, the Granthi, or somebody who allowed himself to be called a saint, that when questioned, they failed even at the superficial questions. But they all had a champion who could answer the questions being posited. And they would send me off on a wild goose chase, go and talk to him. So I would go and talk to him. And he would say, well, I know a little bit, but you should talk to him. And they never ever got together, never had a conversation, and they know nothing. And when I delved more deeply, it was along those 2 or 3 years that I then decided, well, this really needs researching. Where has it gone wrong? And it was then when I went through the major 6, as you have done, I found it's all been corrupted.
positions are for ego rather than for duty. Most who know that it's their duty to do these positions also never
Well, the
wanted
year
it.
400, when Constantine got hold of the Christian religion, and the Christian religion, the Saint Peter then promised him that God would deliver whatever he wanted. And Christianity was changed from what Jesus had taught to the Christianity of the Romans to suit the Romans. That was a big change. What was it? I forget what it, the Conference of Nicosia. I'm sure, are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a diabolical act, really.
It was humans deciding what God is rather than humans paying attention to what it
And this is
actually
what
is.
happens. Money takes over, power takes over, greed takes over. And Sikhi itself, which is only 550 years old last year, is going through a similar structure. In 1922, the British imposed the committee system on Sikhi rather than the five beloved being in charge and the five beloved being spread everywhere. So it had true democracy. It was changed to a committee system, and the committee members know nothing. No point even talking with them, which I've tried. So
the Roman mentality sees this democracy as evolution, not understanding that in democracy you always end up to the same problem. People who don't know what they're talking about, wanting to fulfill emotional wants and desires that can never be true. It's like the idea of completely eradicating bullying. If I wasn't bullied, I wouldn't exist. So eradicating bullying would mean I wouldn't be what I am.
Well, that's the same truism for war. If you eradicate war, then the lessons of war are gone. And if we don't train for it at the very least, what's the point?
Mm.
And the question still stands. If you have two opposing armies, regardless of who or what their beliefs are in the battlefield, what's the difference between them?
I see little difference between most of the sides. They all have virtually the same spectrums of people within them. They just argue over the silly minutiae of existence and all want to be the top dog, not understanding that that very fight to be the top dog shows you're not.
Being that the one is the aggressor and the other one is a defender. So it's the intention. One intends harm and the other is merely defending or stopping the harm.
Unless you get America and Russia.
Say again?
Unless you get America and Russia, and then you've got two aggressors aggressing at each other.
Actually, looked upon in the light of the last 30 years since 1989, since the Berlin Wall came down, it's been extremely clear the aggressor is USA. And with Mr. Trump, it's even worse. He's using Russia to spread that aggression.
Mm-hmm. Don't understand it. They're both Christian cultures.
But it's because Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin are extremely greedy.
Mm.
And also both these countries want as much of the oil and other resources for themselves, which affords control over other countries.
I struggle looking at the world sometimes because who created the banking system and what families and lineages was it? It's not good, the modern banking system. It's very clearly
the banking system goes back
immoral.
At least 4,000 years, so it's not a modern phenomenon.
But the current form of it, in the sense
Current
of
form goes back about that long back, and the term you're looking for is the term called usury.
No, I was thinking about fiat currency, where it's not actually relative to reality anymore.
that's a recent phenomenon. But to go back to the term usury way to fear. In either case, it is a very bad system. When Judaism was evolved into Christianity by Jesus, he tried to stop that and put a different system in place. And certainly Muhammad didn't want usury at all in Islam. But the Jews do want usury, and they're keeping it, and it's very harmful, and it leads to them being harmed wherever they go.
They don't seem to understand that them creating the imbalance of wealth always creates the same perception of them, especially when they don't take care of the people they create wealth from.
According to their scriptures, they are God's chosen people, therefore they shall rule the earth.
They would have been if they followed the rules. They didn't. They were told to never have their own nation, and they did. They created their nation and they kept trying to claim land. And that goes against everything they were told.
This is the exact same kind of situation that Sikh is standing at right now. There was never ever a mention of a Sikh nation. Sikhi in itself is complete. If it becomes a state nation, which is what it's trying to do in the Punjab, it will be its undoing. If it remains as is and keeps spreading all over the world and doing good deeds, and then it will move forward. And we are moving in that case towards an egalitarian society world over. So all these systems have evolved, and they have evolved in the similar directions with similar tools. Christianity certainly did spread arms up until recently, as much as 500, 550 years ago. It was Henry VIII who stopped that. It was Henry VIII who was the spreader of the Protestant religion, just because he wanted to hear. So these things have interfered, and unfortunately, there's nothing much to be done about that except to bypass them and to spread the goodness and let that grow so that the badness can be overcome. That's my loose little plan, and I'm mighty grateful to have people like you on board.
It's a long plan. I've been thinking about the work to be done for years, and it's only now that I'm starting to
I would envisage the next 500 years or so, maybe 1,000 years. Not long. The human race is not going to go away just because there's a slight hotspot in its climate change, nor will we freeze out. We have sufficient energy reserves to outlast anything that happens, really.
The only thing we don't have to last is the loss of intelligent knowledge within our species. If we lose that, it doesn't matter how much fuel we've got.
We have sufficient knowledge stored away to continue. Even having destroyed so much knowledge in the last 4,000, 5,000 years of each other's cultures, we have still come a long way. And we're recouping some of that knowledge, if not all of it. And we will make use of it.
Just got to convince the children that the technology is a part of the problem at the moment. It's happening too fast. We're not balancing with the technology. It's creating an imbalance.
As far as I can see, all technologies have gone the same way each and every time. When we converted from using wooden implements to stone implements over a small epoch, yeah, violence increased. When we went from stone to bronze, yeah, violence increased. When we went from bronze to iron, that was a huge increase in violence.
Say that again.
And when we came to explosives, which was only about 150 years ago, 200 years ago, that we learned to use explosives explosively, dare I say there was an explosion of violence,
Lots of firecrackers.
culminating in millions being obliterated, blown to smithereens. And we are shying away possibly from World War III, and because we now have something that can destroy cities from far away. Complete cities disappear, gone. And it's not a case of, well, we'll destroy 100 of theirs and get away with only a loss of, say, 10. No way, horsey way. If you destroy 100 of theirs, they might destroy 500 of yours. So to say that it's come too quickly, Joel, dare I say it's a bit of a misnomer? To say that it's here too late? No. To say that it's here on time? Yeah, of course it is. How we use it, that's the question. And we should be using it for long-term effects like studying our health, which we're not. Our health systems are not using the computers to store the data to find out exactly how our bodies are reacting under the current system of pollution and or stress, psychological, the whole cupboard. We're not doing it. We're giving it lip service, and we're using drugs to make rich people richer instead of using the bare minimum dosage to see what effect it has. We're overdosing just so that the effect is highly noticeable and say, yeah, it's working. Yeah. All that has to change. Where we're giving away, for argument's sake, 2 tablets with 8 milligrams of codeine in it, it should be down to half a tablet or even a quarter tablet and see how you get on. Try that. See how you get on, whether you, how many hours it gives you relief, and are you able to allow your body to recuperate without overdosing.
I like the story of, I can't remember what culture it came from, but one of our doctors went over and asked another culture, how do you deal with depression? There was a guy who had his leg blown off, and he was sad, and nobody could figure out why, and so they gave him antidepressants. They gave him a cow to look after, so he had purpose in his life, because he was a rice farmer, and with his chopped off leg, he was in pain in the rice fields. So they changed his environment and didn't use drugs.
Yeah.
We just thought, solve the problem. Solve the problem.
Absolutely. We don't think like that. We don't change environments. I remember as a child, you know, doctors used to say things like, you need a change of air, go away for somewhere, go to your relatives for a month or 2 and then come back. We don't do things like that. Maybe we should. Maybe we should go to different culture and embed ourselves in a different culture for a year or 2 or more. The only other thing I would like to say to you is that perhaps we had this conversation before, and I'm quite serious about it, is that we should take a trip or meet up somewhere in the Punjab sometime in the future.
Yeah, that sounds doable. Sounds like I'm on a bit of a world mission at the moment. Got to go to India, got to go over to Worthing, back to Thailand, to the Philippines, and to the Punjab. I'm liking this mission. It
Well,
seems to be taking me interesting places.
If you go from here to the Punjab and then on to Thailand and on to the Philippines, I might even join you for that one. That would be interesting for me. Never been to the Philippines, nor Thailand, nor any further east than that. I've never been further east than Agra, really.
Mm.
Or was it Dehradun? Somewhere around there anyway. I've been south quite a bit into India. I've driven all the way to the border with Iran and back. Driven most of Europe, all on the quest. Didn't find much. The only
I
place I
hope
found
that.
it
I hope
was
the
in
journey will be
Punjab.
more fruitful.
Yeah. Okay, I'm willing to do another round. It's time I did another round sometime soon.
Existence is being a wonderful mistress.
The word existence is a little low level.
It's
Life,
habit.
life itself is a wonderful thing. And appreciating it is a job in itself, really. The wonder of it all.
There's moments when you see the coincidence of so many events. If you go to the maths of it, those coincidences are just so utterly implausible. But they happened, and they're beautiful, and they made everything what they are.
Yep. And they had to happen in the order that they did happen.
I should let you get to your dinner because I probably should do the same. I've only eaten a sandwich all day.
Just a sandwich?
Yeah,
Doesn't your mother cook you anything?
I was at work. Sometimes I forget and just work and work. Most people don't like working with me because when I work a proper day, I tend not to stop. I just keep going. I work a 16-hour day and not think twice about it, whereas everybody else wants to seem to stop every 5-10 minutes. I'm like, but there's work to be done. It's got to be done. Let's get it done.
Okay. Thanks for the conversation. We'll meet probably tomorrow. Bye. Uh-huh.